A court of fairies and fiction. Akafaf Girls Podcast. Hosts Mel and Liv. Episode 3, Speaking of Spring.
All right, Tamlin's, Baldric, and Illyrian hunting knives. This
I
was a little
love this point. Like, I love this.
So this was a little tiny tidbit, or it started as a little tiny tidbit that somebody brought to my attention, and I'm sorry, I don't remember who you were. It might have been someone on our chat group, not sure, but somebody made a reel or a post about how Rhys or Feyre, again, I don't remember the specifics, but they mention how every time Tamlin's wearing his baldric, it's either half empty or mostly empty, and they thought that was weird. So, Feyre, I have it noted here. Yeah, it was Feyre. She notes that most times it's either thin or near empty. Which, why would you even wear it if you're only having like a couple, whatever.
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
But in ACOWAR, we see that he's wearing the full bandolier of Illyrian hunting knives, and Feyre gets pissed. Which she really has no right to get pissed, because does she even know the story? It's not like
she never even asked about the story, though.
She doesn't. She assumes the worst shit, and we're just supposed to believe her.
That's fit. And I'm sorry I'm going to get a lot of hate for saying this, but that is Feyre. She assumes, to me, that's how I feel about her, is like she constantly assumes that.
She assumes everything, and then she acts impulsively.
Yes.
And then when she's wrong, she won't admit that she was wrong.
Yeah.
Ever.
And so, ever. So, like, the fact also that, like, Tamlin has these Illyrian bandoliers, like, that's Tamlin's possession. She's, like, angry about that?
Well, so her thinking was, I'm assuming her thinking was, oh, Rhys gave it to him when they were friends during the warband.
Right.
And, they hate each other now. It's Rhys's, I'm taking it back, because she stole it back.
I know she did.
Fled Spring.
She took his prized possession, which she knows nothing about.
His best friend / brother. If you don't come with me, you're never seeing Elain again. First of all, that was fucking low.
It was so low. It was so dirty.
And I fight with everyone on this point, and I think I even brought it up to you before because you kind of questioned it.
I did.
And the guy in our chat group, I fight with him about this all the time.
He's great.
But he's great. But I fight with him about this all the time, how everyone's like, well, Lucien abandoned Tamlin, and there's two sides of this story. There are people that hate Tamlin and are like, yes, he finally realized what a piece of shit he was and he left. And then there are people that like Tamlin and like Lucien, like me, who see it like he didn't actually abandon him. Feyre didn't give him a choice. They were attacked. They were losing their magic. And she threatened that he would never see his mate again.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, okay, well, Elain wanted nothing to do with him. But at that point, he didn't know how Elain would react, because this was before the war. He had only seen her after the cauldron scene, so he didn't know how she would react to him, because she actually reacted perfectly to him during the cauldron scene. I know a lot of people don't like to make that known because they twist it. And they're like, read the room, Lucien.
Oh, I hate that, because he didn't say it to everybody. He whispered it to Elain. Like, that's all.
Lucien's hand slackened at his side, and his voice broke as he whispered, you are my mate.
He didn't, like, scream. Exactly. He didn't yell it out to everybody.
No. And what people, they're like, read the room, Lucien. Like, he just yelled out, you're my mate. Like, he did not yell it. And actually, the only reason everybody knew was because Nesta threw a fit. Nesta heard him. She threw a fit. She ran over, pushed him away
Yeah,
from
she
Elaine
did.
after
Yeah.
she came out of the cauldron. She threw the fit. But throughout that whole entire thing, like, Lucian spellcleaved, he put the jacket over Elaine. She did not flinch away from him. She was staring at him the whole time, which she knew they were mates first because she was staring at him the whole time.
Totally
Nesta grabbed her away and pushed Lucian. And it says Elaine was still staring over Nesta's shoulder. And then it says, like, the whole thing, like, one eye of russet and one of metal met eyes of brown, or whatever it says. But I'm like, Elaine was not ever afraid of Lucian.
It's
in
funny
that
that you say that. Yeah, no, she wasn't, was she?
She never shied away from him. Nesta forced her away from him.
Which I love. Like, I love Nesta.
But she
love
does do some bad things.
Nesta, and like going back and like rereading, because I read Silver Flames, I was like, oh my gosh, Nesta's my queen, and she still
Yeah.
is.
Oh yeah.
But like I read back and I'm like, oh dude, she sucks, and she's constantly a cock block, constantly
She is.
for Elaine and Lucian. Have you
So,
noticed that?
Yeah. So that's what I think is really funny, actually. Because we love Nesta and we don't like Rhys, right?
Yeah.
But Nesta doesn't want Elaine to be with Lucian for some reason. Like, why? Just because he's friends with Tamlin? Which that never really clicked for me either.
It doesn't
Because
click for me.
Tamlin calls her out in the meeting, like, after everything I did for your family, like, you're gonna
Yeah.
hate me because I had a fallout with your sister. Like, do you even know the whole story? Like,
It's bizarre. It's really
bizarre the way. I know we're getting off track, but
I know,
and then, like,
we're gonna come back to it.
The way that they just her and Cassian and Eris invade Spring, and then she's like threatening to cut his head off. Like, you're
Yeah.
in his lands, whether he's ruling them or not. He's still alive. He's still the High Lord. You are
Yes.
still trespassing.
Yeah.
I love you, Nesta, but you are in the wrong here.
You know what? It's so funny because I feel the same exact way. Like, literally, I read Silver Flames and I was like, Nesta is the best character, like
Yeah.
the best female character in ACOTAR. That's how I felt. But as time has gone on and I think more about it, I don't know so much. Nesta's kind of messed up and she did a lot of bad things.
So it's funny because we know that Nesta gets a lot of hate for the fandom stuff that they hate her for.
Right.
I don't hate her for the regular fandom stuff that the fandom hates her for. The only thing I dislike her for is for hating Tamlin, because it never made sense to me. They're pretty much the same person. They have the same trauma.
She identifies as she's like, I'm like Tamlin, and she
No shit. So what? Not to mention that Feyre pretty much does the same shit to her that she did to Tamlin, but we're not gonna go there right now.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like, you're just gonna believe everything Feyre says, even though Feyre's the one that locked you up too. What?
I know.
What?
I'm not gonna lie. It was literally this week when I've been thinking about Nesta's been on my mind constantly, and I'm like, that was really messed up what she did to Tamlin in his own court when they were secretly meeting there.
So it's like, you hate Tamlin for, I don't know, reasons unknown, for like being mean to Feyre when like you and Feyre don't even get along that much anyway, which is fucking weird. Okay, I get it. She's your sister. You're the oldest. I get that.
Right.
But you gotta give some people some leeway. Like, if you're giving Feyre some leeway, you gotta give Tamlin some leeway.
Yes.
He gave you riches so you wouldn't die in the dead of winter. He restored your reputation. He gave you back your fame. He gave you a huge mansion to live in with his own funds before he even found the father's ships in Barat.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And I love how he brought that up at the meeting.
Yeah.
After everything I did for your family. And she was like,
oh, they had nothing to say back to it. Nesta just was like all pissed off because it's true.
It's true.
It's true. Even Feyre didn't have anything to say back to that.
We say that all the time. We love the High Lord meeting. But
I love the High Lords meeting. I love there's so much to unpack, and like I can't wait till we do an episode on it.
I know. But back to the point, like the way that she just transfers that hate for Tamlin onto hatred for Lucian.
Yeah.
Like, she acts like, I mean, I know at the time she was thinking, like, Cassian says I'm his mate, so he treats me like his possession, blah, 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 and she doesn't want that to happen to Elaine. But it's very obvious that Cassian and Lucian are two different people. Cassian is more like Rhys. He was on top of her. He was pressuring her. I know you love him. I'm
I love
sorry.
Cassian.
But, like,
love him.
bro, keep it in your pants for a little bit, okay? Calm the fuck down.
I loved it. I don't.
Like, she's trapped in the house with you right now. She doesn't have a choice, okay? Calm the fuck down. And then there's Lucian, who's literally giving Elaine space, asking her what she needs periodically to check up on her, telling Feyre, like, please get her out of the house. I don't care who she goes with. Just take her to a garden because that's what
Yes.
she needs. And I'm like, he is the single most respectful male in this series. I don't care what anybody says.
No, he is.
Lucian is the most fucking decent male in the entire series.
He's constantly, we're gonna have to retitle this episode like a Lucian appreciation episode. But like he's constantly, he gives everybody, he's the only character that does this, gives everybody the benefit of the doubt, and he thinks about both sides, everybody's opinion, and he's constantly like playing mediator.
Yeah.
I mean, and like he knew Elaine wanted nothing to do with him, and he's probably very hurt by it, but he doesn't show it.
All he can do is make an effort, and everyone is always like, he's constantly after her, and but like,
No,
when
he's not.
when the fuck is he constantly after her? He visits periodically just to check on her because they're mates. You're
I can't
telling me
believe
that
people
Rhys,
say that.
You're telling me that he's as bad as Rhys. Be real.
Okay, you know what I'm starting to think here, and this is a really unpopular opinion. Okay, and don't hate me for this because I know you love Feyre and stuff. I'm starting to think that the Archeron
Don't
sisters
like
are.
Feyre.
No, you don't love
I
Feyre.
don't like Feyre at all. What are you
But-
talking about?
I feel like these Archeron sisters are a little bit like toxic, maybe because
Oh, they're
like,
definitely toxic.
they're totally toxic because
Well,
like
think of their fucking like upbringing.
their mom, true,
Their mom, their abusive grandmother,
their
who
grandmother.
she caned Nesta for misstepping in dance when she was a little kid. She has scars on her hands from her.
That was crazy. And then the absentee deadbeat dad, basically. I'm sorry. That's how to me, I could not stand the father.
Okay, so this is where I'm also unpopular. Shocker. I do agree that the father was very neglectful. I do agree that he was a deadbeat in the years that they were poor. The years that they
Yeah.
were not poor, he was a traveling merchant.
Yeah.
And the way that ACOTAR is kind of not like in a certain period, but it's not super modern like Crescent City, but it's
Right.
not super old school either.
Right.
But basically, it was like he was the working father and she was the stay-at-home mother, right?
Yeah.
So he was bringing back the money, the food, probably gifts for them.
Yeah.
I would probably even assume that they had a nanny since the mother didn't give two shits about them.
That's true.
All she cared about was prepping her two eldest children for marriage, which
Yeah.
again, automatically weird.
And
We
weird.
can sell them off to marriage. Like, you're already rich.
That's what I don't understand. And also weird that she like didn't care about her youngest daughter.
She didn't care about Feyre at all.
Like at all.
At all. Until she was on her deathbed. Have I ever discussed that with you?
We haven't.
Oh no, I did a YouTube video on that.
We'll have to watch it and discuss it because it sounds interesting.
There was a very cryptic thing that the mother said to Feyre on her deathbed.
The one where she's talking about take care of the family?
No.
Where she said, promise me you'll take care of them?
No, so it was the one where, so it's part of that. She said, promise me you will stay together. Which makes no sense if she was readying to send off Nesta and Elaine into marriage, right?
Stay together.
Which goes back to their Fae heritage and the mother knowing they would end up in Prythian. They're all together in the Night Court right
They
now.
are all together in the Night
Stay
Court.
together, which is weird because I don't want to say that Nesta is kind of inherently connected to her mother because I know she hates her mother.
Yeah.
And the mother was probably like a pompous bitch.
She
But
sounds awful.
the way that Nesta acts towards Lucian makes me think that she kind of knows Elaine would leave with him at some point. Stay together. I don't know. That just kind of clicks with me in my head. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. It does because like they're not gonna be staying together. Elaine legit is leaving with Lucian.
Even Cassian is like, Night Court Black drains all the life from Elaine. Like, she doesn't belong here. Nesta even says she doesn't belong here.
See? She's not staying there. Let's be real.
Day
They're
Court
leaving.
Illusion for the win, please.
Oh, I totally support
I need
that.
it. I need
I
it.
need it. I need to see some of that. But okay, back to Spring Daddy.
Circling back,
back to
I think
him.
that's part of the reason why Nesta hates Lucian.
I think that's interesting. I like that.
Because she knows that they're very similar. Like, she has to know that they're very similar because she's at this point, she has all of her powers, right? She can
Right.
like Azriel, she can feel things that others don't because we have
True.
all these weird situations where she's like, I feel like I should do this, and Feyre's like, why? She's like, I don't know, I just have to.
Yeah.
Like, I just know that I have to. So it's weird. But yeah, I think like something inside of her just knows that like Elaine and Lucian are the same person, the same vibe.
They are.
Like, he's the son of the High Lord of Sun.
Lucian is
What do you need?
simply the
Sunshine.
best.
Hello, people. Oh no, she's gonna end up with Azriel. In what fucking world?
I only
Not
have
this one.
and I love Az. I love Azriel.
Love Azriel.
I love
He's
Azriel.
my favorite bad boy.
Oh my god, he's the best. I mean, like I don't know Az's story yet, so I can't be like, but like Cassian,
I don't care. I like him more than Cass. I don't care.
Cassian has my heart, man. I don't know. I love him so much.
Oh boy. I'll
Yeah.
plan for your morning stage.
How dare you say that to me right now?
Dress in all black when you visit me.
I know. Can you imagine us talking if what you think is going to happen in Crescent City 3 actually happens? Like, I'm pretty sure our next 4 podcasts after I read that book are just going to be me like mourning my favorite character in the entire series. I'll be devastated.
Oh man.
But okay, so anyways, so his bandoliers.
So yeah, so he left with Feyre because he wanted a chance with his mate. Can we
Right.
really blame him for that? I don't
No.
blame him for that.
No.
And he wasn't really abandoning Tamlin, if you think about it, because in the situation, Ianthe was there. Feyre fucks him over with
She does.
Tamlin, which why?
Yeah.
Even the way that she was like, oh, I could and just should leave him here. Like, what has Lucian done but try to be on your side?
He helped you during the trials when you were a human.
He helped you during the trials.
Yep.
He healed your nose.
Yes.
He fought with Tamlin for you. He hid your mating bond tattoo because he didn't know the scope of your plan to destroy his home. He just thought you kind of wanted petty revenge against Tamlin, which, okay, anyone would.
That's my gripe with him. I have 2 gripes with him. Just to air him real quick, he should have never hid the fact that she melted off the wedding ring, because there would be no drama, none.
Yeah.
And then in that, like, he did let Feyre destroy his court, and that's my gripe. But
well, so the thing with the ring, honestly, I think he was just trying to spare Tamlin some grief because he knew that just her being gone was going to be bad enough, which he said, like, he blew up the whole manor. Secondly, we know that the males have kind of a pattern of um gifting like generational jewelry, I want to say. So was it his mother's ring that she ruined? I like to think, I know that it hasn't happened yet, but I like to think that he took the pieces to try to fix them.
Oh, I actually really love that. Because you want to know
It
what?
was an emerald. Like, I think it was his mom's ring.
I think it was his mom's ring too.
Because,
I
like,
did
Rhys gave Farah his mom's ring, too.
ring.
And if Lucian could give Elaine his mom's ring, but Eris probably gets the mom's ring.
I think Eris gets it. I think Eris gets it.
Well, unless it's just whoever gets married or mated first.
That's a whole other thing.
Which would be Lucian. Sadly, poor Eris. Eris is gonna end up alone, and I'm dreading that so badly.
I wonder if like Eris is the one that's going to be killed off in the series because he doesn't have ties. Well, he doesn't have anybody.
I can't get into that theory because I will just start rambling, but he does have somebody in my you know what I'm talking about, I think.
I do know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about.
I actually
100% believe he has somebody that hasn't been said or fleshed out yet. Another thing that's in my fanfic that you should continue reading at some point.
Well, and then let me ask you this. Okay, because I had this theory, and I know I think you and I talked about it too. Because I'm convinced that Rhysand's sister is alive and that Tamlin and Lauren, that's his mate. So my question is, do you think that was a gift from her or a gift from Rhys?
The knives?
The knives for Tamlin.
No, I think it was a gift from the sister, and I think Feyre just assumed it was a gift from Rhys.
Yeah. I think it
because why would
from the sister too?
Huh?
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. But then you have to think, like, where did the sister get it? Did she steal it from her dad?
She could have. Or what if she had it made from like the Smith and Silver Flames?
What if?
What?
I don't know. I was gonna say, what if the mother knew and the mother helped her get those made for Tamlin? And it was like the same route that they kind of got killed on.
I would not be surprised because I think we do not have the entire story at all. But it's like you were even telling me the other day that why would you wear that? Why would he wear that in ACOWAR to the war? If that was Rhys's, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I did have did I like write it here? Oh, well, he could have just done it to kind of put on an air of like, okay, we hate each other, but we both have to fight together like we did in the past.
Like camaraderie, maybe?
Yeah.
Like a show of camaraderie for him?
Yeah.
I mean, I could see it.
Yeah. Or just to, well, actually, I remember what my theory was now. I don't know why it clicked because I actually wrote it on the little thing. We should be looking at our guides.
We need to be following our script more and not talking about Lucian and how much we love him.
So the first time that the Illyrian hunting knife bandolier shows up is when he's in Hybern.
True.
That's why Feyre gets pissed about it, because she's convinced that he's allied with the King of Hybern. I think that he wore that there specifically to tip them off that he wasn't actually allied with the king.
So then why didn't Rhys pick up on that, though? Because don't you think? Because he's emotional?
The thing with Rhys and Feyre are, like, they let their emotions cloud their head.
Yeah, they do.
For Daemati, like, I feel like that's and then we also had Jurian saying like, "Oh, Reese is blind when it comes to the people he cares about." And there's this
Jurian
whole
and Aaron.
kind of back and forth in the fandom of like, does he actually still have a soft spot for Tamlin, or does he not? I guess you could make an argument for both sides, maybe, but not really. I don't know.
I don't know, because in Frost and Starlight,
He's so mean.
he's horrible.
But then he leaves after he tells him to rot there.
Yeah.
And he's like, a certain hollowness took root in my stomach and I felt guilty. Like,
Not-
oh, you should.
Not only that, but do you remember at the very end of it too, like, I can't remember if it was after he got called out in Frost and Starlight or not. It was like someone was saying how badly Tamlin's doing, and he's like, I don't know if it was like Azriel or something, but like Reese is like looking out into the hills.
Yes.
Where Tamlin's in his beast form, and like
towards the spring court.
Specifically
Weird.
They were talking about Tamlin, and like you could tell he's thinking about Tamlin.
It's weird, man.
It's so weird because it's either like Reese still loves Tamlin as a friend, like they're, you know what I mean? Because like he's keeping him alive. Like, I don't know.
Well, he did kind of convince him to kill himself in Akafast. You deserve everything you got, and I don't care at this point.
Yeah, he did.
What the fuck?
I can't tell.
I also thought that it was funny how, well, not funny, but the way that everyone says that Tamlin is like the most emotional person and he can't handle his anger and all of this stuff. And Reese was like, fight me, fight me, fight me.
Yeah.
And Tamlin was just like, get out. Like,
yeah.
I'm not fighting you.
Oh, I hated reading that scene. It was so upsetting.
Like, I'm sorry. You can say Tamlin has anger issues all you want. I think it's because of his magic. I don't think it's actual anger issues, and I have fought with so many people about this. But Reese is way more emotional than Tamlin, and I'm gonna say it.
He
acts without thinking.
He totally acts without thinking all the time.
Unlike Tamlin. Like, Tamlin is always like 3 steps ahead.
Mm-hmm. But he never gets credit for it.
He never gets credit for it.
Had it not, and I tell this to everybody, had it not been for Feyre's actions, like for Feyre's actions, convincing everyone that Tamlin was a villain and truly working with Hybern, like he would have been hailed a hero at the High Lords meeting, because he had the whole packet of the tactics,
the pages of intel.
Yes. And everyone would have been like, Tamlin, great job. Like, thank you for being a double agent. Like, that was wonderful. No.
So it's weird because in the beginning of ACOWAR, when she goes back and she's like, hey, I'm a wolf, and all this fucking egotistical bullshit that I hate.
Yeah, and the head, whatever.
But he comes in because she's pretending to be like his pretty little fiance and painting and all of this, even though she like burns it because she's angry. He comes in and they're discussing basically his deal with Hybern, right? Not the full thing, because as I said before, he doesn't fully trust her, and who would? Because she's been with the enemy this whole time, who can literally like control people's heads. But he tells her, like, I went to Hybern because I knew that they were going to take down the wall, and so I went to them first, and I told them I will let them at the wall if they spare my people. Because you have to remember, in Akamath, Hybern is the one that sacks the temples. Sangrava, which I think is in Autumn, part of the other theory, and the Sisir Temple in the Night Court. Sacks them. This is what happens with Gwen and everything. It happens in Akamath. In case anybody didn't remember that. Because in Akasif, she does say it was 2 years ago, so that tracks. But she goes, well, at the very least, he thought about saving his people. I highlighted that because she says yeah, he did it to save his people. And then she's like, you would have let your people rot because you went to Hybern. So it's like, why? I just don't get why she says something and she knows something as a fact, and then down the line she always twists it and changes it 180.
I totally see it too.
I don't get it.
I don't get it. I can't tell if that's so I saw this thing online, right?
Mhm.
And because I think I was bringing up this point to someone else and they said to me, well, that is what happens with abuse victims when they're looking back on it, their ideas and concept of what happened change. And
Mhm.
and normally I would say, yeah, you know what, like I could see that. I could agree with that.
Yeah, usually they try to minimize it though. They don't maximize it, which is what's
Yeah,
weird. So instead of making it lesser, she makes it worse.
worse than what actually happens.
Yeah. Which again, we have to do a whole other video on her inconsistencies.
Yeah, we
as
do.
we've said before, because
Yeah.
there's just so many of them and they're very glaring and they're very obvious, and it's just night and day, yin and yang, like completely different. Like, you lived these
Mhm.
and now you're saying it didn't happen the way it happened, and it's like, it did though.
I know. And that's the thing that bothers me too. It's everything. Feyre makes
Yeah.
these assumptions.
Yeah.
Those are reasons, and we're gonna take that back.
Yeah.
That's Night Court property. I'm gonna take
Yeah.
your bandoliers back.
Yeah.
Dude, you don't know the story
Yeah.
behind that.
The other thing that really pisses me off is when everyone says that he is the one that got the sisters thrown in the cauldron, right?
Oh God.
So,
Are we talking about this right now?
really quickly, as
Yeah.
quickly as we can
Yeah.
before we make like a whole other video about it. I know where they're getting that.
Where?
Because
I never figured it out.
okay, so I went through Akawar a few weeks ago, like I told you, and the Hybern scene in Akamath. And so in the cauldron scene in Akamath, the King of Hybern says it's Ianthe. Ianthe basically confirmed with the queens, and the queens didn't really want to tell her where they were because they had some modicum of goodness left before they went into the cauldron. But basically, Ianthe learned where the sisters were from Feyre herself.
Feyre told her.
Yeah, Feyre told her, and
Feyre
Ianthe
admits
told the
that.
King of Hybern because she wanted to get rid of High Lords. So she backstabbed Tamlin
Yes. Yeah.
because she didn't want him to know that they were
Right.
getting rid of High Lords
Right.
for the High Priestesses. That was the
Right.
whole entire ordeal. That was the whole thing with Ianthe.
Ianthe wants
Tamlin was
the
not
Supreme
working
Court.
with Ianthe because Ianthe was working against him.
Right.
So Feyre says in the scene, she goes, like, that backstabbing bitch or whatever.
Yeah.
But then she goes, I had told her all about my sisters,
Yes.
their whereabouts, their blah, blah, blah. She blames herself and Ianthe in that scene. So that was the first instance of her bringing that up. The second is when they get back in Akawar. Like I said, when he was telling her about the wall and everything and his deal with Hybern. And at the end, she says, I'm going to kill Ianthe and Jurian for this. So now she's taken herself out of it and she's substituted herself for Jurian. So now, instead of it being her and Ianthe's fault, it's Ianthe and Jurian's fault. Because, as we know, Jurian was also playing a spy there, and he did shoot Azriel, which I don't know if I forgive him for that quite yet. He's a very complicated person, and I hate him for shooting Azriel. But to keep up appearances in front of the King of Hybern,
Yeah.
he had to do shit. Tamlin and Lucien had to do shit. Their masks. Hello. If Rhys can wear a mask, so can everyone else.
Everyone else can wear one too.
No. So that was the second instance where she says it's Ianthe and Jurian. And then that's the two instances that Feyre says it. And then going back to the cauldron scene after, when we get the point of view from Rhys, when they drag Azriel back and he's bleeding and Mor is all concerned because at this point we thought they were going to be mates. Haha. Stupid us.
Jokes on us. Jokes
And
on
it-
us.
I mean, they were supposed to be, and then there was a bait and switch. But
I
anyways,
kind of wish they were, but it's okay.
yeah, but it's fine. I like Gwen better now. But anyways, in that scene, Rhys tells Amryn, because Amryn's questioning them. Rhys says, Ianthe went behind Tamlin's back and told Hybern where to find the sisters. And then Mor says, I forget the exact word, but she said, Ianthe betrayed Tamlin. We couldn't help them. All we could do was stand there and watch as they were dragged into the cauldron. So Rhys says Ianthe betrayed Tamlin. Mor says Ianthe betrayed Tamlin. Feyre herself says her and Ianthe betrayed the sisters. Ianthe betrayed Tamlin. Jurian betrayed the sisters. So that's 4 already, where obviously it's Ianthe's fault, but it's also Feyre's fault. Right?
It's
Ianthe
totally
and Feyre's
Feyre's
fault. So this whole time when I'm fighting with people on Instagram and I'm like, where are you getting that Tamlin kidnapped them to put them in the cauldron? Like, this makes no fucking sense.
No.
And then I was reading the High Lords meeting. Again, my favorite scene.
I love it.
And there is actually a line in the High Lords meeting from Feyre after when she's fighting with Tamlin after I think it's after he I don't know if it's before or after he takes his voice away. It might have been before. I don't know.
Yeah.
But there is a line when she says, "You and your high priestess betrayed my sisters." Or got my sisters thrown in the cauldron. So she does say, "You and your high priestess." So now she took herself out of it. She took Jurian out of it. Now it's Tamlin and Ianthe.
Okay, what is going on
In
with Feyre?
front of all the High Lords.
That's crazy. It's just crazy. That's not even what happened. See, this is what I'm talking about with Feyre.
Yeah.
Things are changing. The story changes.
Yeah.
Things are like, that doesn't even make any sense to me. And she's like without blame now. Like,
Yeah.
you're the one to blame. Also, as a sister, like, I just want to throw this point out here real quick. How could you not think that possibly they were going to be collateral damage? Like, even when
No
you
shit.
suggested using their house, like, I knew that initially.
That
When
was my
she-
next point. It's
Well, right.
also your fault. Even if you didn't tell Ianthe about them, you forced them to host these queens.
Yeah.
Who then consorted with Ianthe. So
just,
they could have told them where they were.
well, that's what I'm just so confused about. I was like, how did you guys not think they were going to be dragged into this? Like, that's ridiculous.
But that's why I'm confused at Nesta. Like, why are you mad at Tamlin and not mad at Feyre?
Totally.
No sense.
Totally.
No sense.
It makes no sense. There's no logic. What I feel like I keep seeing, and it's really frustrating, is that the appropriate person is not being blamed for their actions. It's like
this, like, Tamlin was a spy from the very fucking beginning.
totally.
It had nothing to do with getting Feyre back. He
No.
literally told her in the meeting, like, I had to convince him that I was on his side, right? What else would convince Hybern that he was on his side? He had to use the fact that, oh, sure, I want my fiance back, right?
Yeah.
That would convince him. And he said, I was finding a way around it. I meant to find a way around it. That's why during the cauldron scene, like, when he slow-mo lunges for her and then Rhys, like, punches him or whatever. Like, he let Rhys punch him. Come on. He let that happen. He knew Feyre was gonna winnow away, because you can't tell me he didn't know Feyre had winnowing powers by now.
Oh, he knew.
Lucien would have told him.
Yeah.
You know? So he had to put on that act in front of Hybern. Kind of like Eris, like I said, kind of like Eris in front of Baron, how he has to be a dick in front of his father, but he isn't, in secret. Tamlin had to wear that mask in front of Hybern. He had to convince Hybern that he was on his side so he could continue to spy. That's why he had to pretend that he was going to force Feyre back, even though he tells her at the meeting, I never would have actually forced you back. I had to make him believe this. I was gathering intel, you know? And then, as we know, with the whole wards and everything, she had to play Reese's victim and play on his actual real feelings of being worried for her. Because everybody loves to forget that even this far into ACOWAR, people still thought that Reese's court was like the court of just nightmares, like torture. They had no knowledge of Valaris until, was it right before or right after the High Lords meeting?
Yeah.
So they still had no idea that he was like a decent person until, yeah, it was a little bit before the High Lords meeting. And then all of a sudden, during the High Lords meeting, all the High Lords are on Reese's side. Like,
That's what I always found that really weird because I thought that like, okay, so you go from Tamlin under the mountain, kills Amarantha. So in my mind, like people would be super grateful to
he
him.
met
and,
with
like,
them. He met with all of them.
that's
Right
what-
after he killed Amarantha, they had a meeting
they had meetings
under the mountain.
I know.
And
I
Reese
read that.
fled. It said like Reese had fled. He was nowhere to be found. Like Reese was not a part of that meeting. He was getting the fuck out of Dodge. Tamlin stayed and met with all of them. Like, I think he's a better diplomat than Reese. I'm gonna say it. People are gonna hate me. I don't give a flying fuck.
No, I do too.
He does everything for his people.
Yeah.
Everything for the whole of Prithian.
Yes.
And yet everyone's like, oh, Reese is such a good High Lord. Oh, Reese did everything for his court. First of all, he did everything for Valaris, not for his court. He doesn't give a shit about Illyria. He doesn't give a shit about Hewn City.
Yeah.
It's only for Valaris. And Valaris was already warded from its inception by his ancestor. He tells Feyre in Akamath. Like, so it was not his shield.
It wasn't. So that's
Like,
why I'm
he
just
didn't
like
do it for Valaris. He did it for himself.
I'm just so surprised that people that there was
Feed into
such
this
a
shit.
just a dynamic change
Yeah.
with the High Lord at the High Lords meeting
And
too,
it's just
and that people were just thinking the worst of him and they didn't even think about his training or his past or the fact that this is not his first war. It's not anyone's first war, but I'm just shocked.
even the fact that his entire, even going back to ACOTAR, his entire character revolved around his hatred for Hybern. Because Amarantha was his general.
I know.
His entire character was built on this hatred for Hybern. He said in the High Lords meeting, I once told you I would always fight against tyrannies. And I love that line.
I actually love that
much.
line. It's probably one of
I
my
told you.
favorites.
Did you think you were enough to turn me from that?
I know. I read
My
that and I was
man.
like, Sarah J. Maas, this is perfection.
Like, she writes him so perfectly, and then she's still like, oh, ew, Tamlin. And I'm like, how can you not understand your own character that you just wrote this perfectly?
I don't understand.
it.
I don't understand what she's doing with Tamlin. And like, I
understand.
have three different thoughts. So she either truly hates him, right? Like, actually, is how she feels. Because in every interview I've ever watched of her, she's always like, he's such a horrible person. He's a
She's
douche.
such
I
a
hate
dick.
Spring.
Like-
Yeah. She really, truly seems like she doesn't like him.
Or she's playing the mask from her
Or-
favorite character.
I know. Or she's playing a mask, or because there's going to be
More
a
books.
big reveal, or like our theory, like this is a huge
Yeah.
redemptive
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah, like there's a lot of history and strings that haven't led to anything yet. Like I said, like the whole thing with their friendship and the whole thing with how the mother and sister actually died because Reese got it secondhand from his father. You know?
I know. So it's
And like we know nothing about
cracks me up.
Tamlin's mother. We only really know about his brothers and his father, which I think leads into the Starborn thing.
yeah. And that's a
You
whole
know?
other video. So we'll talk.
Yeah.
That takes a
But-
lot. There's a lot going on with the Starborn stuff.
Yeah. But just the way that she writes him to be correct at the end of every single, he ends up being right about everything.
I know he does.
If you look at it objectively, even if you love Reese, if
Yeah.
you just looked at it objectively, Tamlin ends up being right about everything.
I know
He
does.
tells Feyre, like, he will manipulate you into, like, liking him, or this will happen, Hybern is like this, Amaranth is like this, and, like, he's right at every turn.
So I've been thinking a lot about this too, Rhysand, right? And because I think you and I are very similar. Like initially I read this and I gotta tell you, when Feyre did that with the Spring Court, like I was like,
I was
man,
so mad.
I
Like,
was
that is not a
so
girl boss thing
mad.
to do, to get innocent people killed over your petty revenge, like over your ex.
That's what I mean, is like when you
She's
start
like, I'm so
involving
happy with Rhys. I'm so happy with Rhys. I love Rhys. Then go fucking focus on Rhys. Like, why are you getting people killed?
That's all I mean, is like, okay, had Feyre just left and left Tamlin with his court intact, I would have been like, you know what, that's cool, whatever. Like, I would have been such a bigger Fazan supporter had she left Tamlin's court intact.
Like,
To me, that was not girl boss.
alone. For
Leave him
God's
alone.
sake.
Just give him closure.
Yeah.
First and foremost, have a conversation to his face.
Yeah.
I don't like you. Rhys is my mate. I love him. I don't want to be with you. I'm sorry. Thank you for everything you did. I'm gonna
She
leave
won't
and never come
actually talk to him about anything other than the war.
Never.
She makes
She
excuses
never-
why they won't like be close after there, which again, going back to Akgatar and how she's like, Tamlin notices everything. Like, you're telling me he didn't notice that he knew you didn't want to be close to him and shit. Like, he was suspicious of you. That's why he didn't tell you about his actual plan of being a spy at Hybern. Come on.
And you want to know what? I kind of hope that that's actually true. And like, I feel like I need Tamlin's point of view. So I'm going to be really
so
bummed
badly.
out if we never get it.
Me too. I'm gonna be so mad.
Because Tamlin he's brilliant and it's so
Yeah.
obvious. And like everyone tries to make him out like he's stupid, but like I'm sure he noticed that.
He absolutely noticed that. He absolutely noticed that. You can't tell me he didn't. She's like, oh, I've been making up all the excuses not to sleep with him. Like, he's not gonna notice you making up excuses.
I know. Does he really not know? He's 500. Isn't he 500 years old?
508.
Yes.
Well, yeah, 506 on Akawar, technically. Yeah. I don't know why I don't know why their ages are burned into my head for no reason. I just like know all of their ages.
I'm glad that you know it because I don't know it.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, Azriel is 538, almost 539 in Akasif, because Rhys and Cassian are 536.
Yeah.
And they were 8 when Azriel was 11. And they taught him to fly.
Okay. Interesting.
And Lucian, since, you know, Rhys is like, I was slaughtering on the battlefield when you were born, I'm assuming he's at least 100 years younger. So he's about 430? 400, 430? All right, so I have a point with the bandolier as well. So it could have just been that he wore it to the war. Because if you think of war, obviously people think of death and like how many people have they known that have died in like wars and stuff. But even if it was kind of empty, like what if he wore it because it was a gift from the sister, and like if he died he wanted to be wearing something of hers that she gave him. It's so sad.
I love that.
It's so sad though. It's so sad though.
But like honestly, like why? Because I just like think about it too. Like I guess Rhys can gift him with a bandolier of knives and stuff, but like I don't know, it just makes more sense that it would maybe be like
a romantic gift. Yeah.
It's a romantic gift. There's knives. Like
yeah.
And the thing is he uses it like all the time, right?
Yeah. Like I said before, I think he used it in the Hybern camp to try to tip Rhys off that he wasn't actually working with Hybern. And just because him and Feyre are so googly-eyed at each other, like they can't see anything past their lust, bothers me.
They can't be objective really ever because they can't focus without with the other person there.
And the thing that bothered me about that is that like I know that Azriel was on the ground because Jurian like shot him, and I know they were like worried about each other and everything, but like neither Feyre nor Rhys lunged for Nesta and Elain they just sat there and took it. Rhys only lunched for Feyre when Tamlin was like, oh, maybe I'll winnow you out. Like, he was never going to be
try
able to
to
because the wards were up. So, like, what did she think he was doing?
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's an act in front of Hybern. But Tamlin lunched for them. Lucien lunched for them.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't know. To me, they're just way more moral than Rhys.
I kind of agree with that, actually. Like, the thing that bothers me too is like the fandom's like, Tamlin did nothing. Tamlin, it is in the text. It's literally
Yeah.
in the text, and like we can
It
find it.
proves you wrong. It's in the text that he had no idea what Ianthe did.
No.
And then people are like, well, he's guilty by association. Okay, what?
Wait.
So that means Rhys is guilty by association of everything Amarantha did
Yes.
because he worked for her.
And that's such a good point. Like, if we were to live as like just a society of guilty by association, like that doesn't make any sense.
Like, okay, so like you had a childhood friend who came to visit you, right? You haven't seen them in years.
Ages.
You don't know what they're like now, but they seem like the same kind person they've always been. And then they're going behind your back. How would you know that? You wouldn't know that.
You wouldn't until it was too late.
Exactly. Unless you're a mind reader like Rhys and Feyre, which Feyre didn't want to bother going into his mind because, oh, it's such a dark and dreary place. Okay, if you really wanted to know the truth, you would have gone into his mind, but she just wanted fuel to fuck over his court.
Well, and another thing that really bothers me, right, is that there's this whole like morality, or not morality, but like, you know, like I have an issue going into other people's minds type of things.
Yeah.
So it's
there's
amazing.
A line that I won't cross. Like, which lines have you not crossed, Rhys?
Yeah. Yes. So here's
You've already crossed them.
If you hate Tamlin so much, you hate him, why do you care about that line?
What?
Why?
Yeah.
And even if it's dark and dreary, like if you want to hurt and kill somebody, go into their mind.
Yeah.
And Feyre had no qualms about going into Lucien's mind either.
Oh yeah, well, she felt guilty after the fact.
Oh,
and Rhys was like, well, just now you know not to do it again. She's like, well, I've done it a couple times, but I didn't like realize it the first time. And then the second time I wanted to keep listening, but I felt guilty about it. And then the third time was also an accident. It's like,
Feyre and your guilt.
And her guilt, which I find very odd, is almost nearly immediately washed away just when Rhys suggests that she shouldn't have any.
It blows my mind. I mean, and like the fact that she just lives guilt-free, like, I destroyed the Spring Court. I'm going to bring this up over and over again until people get it. Like,
I know. I blocked it out. I pushed it out of my mind. Must be real fucking nice for you to push fucking murder and genocide out of your mind.
Yeah, like it literally created a refugee crisis for like
an insurrection so bad that people's homes got burned down.
Yes. After these people just came back from being at these like slave camps.
Yeah.
Blows my mind. She's
Yeah, and after she was like, after she had offered to like help them rebuild, and they were like, I feel like it was foreshadowing that they were very wary of her, even though she saved them. I was like, this isn't going well, because they wanted nothing to do with her, and I thought that was hilarious.
I always like wondered about that though. I was like, I know that the whole thing was like she paid the ultimate price, like her life, and they didn't want to ask anything.
Yeah, and then into like a better life. But okay.
Yeah. Yeah, like let's be real. Feyre like leveled up from her like poverty-stricken human life to
they all leveled up.
High lady.
Like it's not to like diminish like their trauma or whatever, because obviously that's traumatic.
Totally.
But like the way that Rhys was like, Tamlin didn't care about your trauma, but I care about your trauma. But then he goes and he traumatizes her more.
Totally.
Like,
totally.
Tamlin was trying to protect her from it, from Hybern and everything.
Yeah.
Probably not the best way, but she was throwing a fit like a 5-year-old. So you have to deal with someone like that, like they're a child.
Mm-hmm.
But then Rhys was like, oh, you know, like, I would never lock you up. I would never traumatize you like that. Then he tricks her into fighting for her life at the Weavers, tricks her into fighting for her life to get the Book of Breathings, doesn't answer when she screams down the bond at the Hybern camp, doesn't tell her about her pregnancy risk. It's like, what?
I want to know.
You guys,
the thing too.
you're spewing this bullshit, right? It's like,
Yes.
you say how moral you are. You say there's lines you guys will never cross, but your actions do not line up with your words ever.
No, they don't. Like, if you were to say to me, right, and I'm just gonna drop this little seed here just because of our conversation, like that, you know, Reese was a villain or whatever, like, I would be like, dude, that makes
so much
total
sense.
Makes total sense, right?
He
But, like,
makes way more sense as a villain rather than a redeemed good guy.
right,
Because he's not a redeemed good guy when he continues to be the bad guy.
no, and it's like you said, like the fact that he didn't answer at the Hybern camp, that to me,
You're
when I
telling
read
me
that,
you're not feeling her panic and her
Yeah.
screams, but you
Yes.
could hear her panic at her wedding?
yeah.
Fuck
It
off
just
with
some
that.
of these things
Fuck
just like don't really add up, right? And that's the whole thing with like
He's
the
pulling the
Tamlin
strings.
thing.
Come on, he's pulling the strings.
I know. I actually like I'm
Puppet
convinced.
master.
Well, now that we've talked about it, and that's for like a whole other video, but like I actually am convinced now that we've like laid everything
I
out.
fully
about it.
convinced you.
You totally did convince me. But I will say, so I think too, like my number one thing when we were talking about making this like Lauren Tamlin theory, and when we both kind of
Mhm.
figured it out, I'm convinced it's gonna happen, is
Mhm.
that Tamlin he's not a bad person, right? He's a good guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
He
and
just has
the,
like 500 years of trauma and like people telling him he's not good enough and just everyone tearing him down or going
Yes.
after his life. Like he lives in survival mode.
Yeah,
He doesn't know any other way to live because
No.
he's had to protect his life his entire life.
Yeah.
His
And
father,
the
his
entire-
brothers, Amarantha, Ianthe, Reese.
Yes. He's always been like that. And the whole point of like, especially this theory too, is like that like there's such a double standard, right? And like
God.
no, people just don't defend Tamlin, but like I do think
Yeah.
he needs defending because
Yeah.
like Reese and Tamlin both do questionable things. And you have to throw Feyre into the mix there.
Oh
too.
yeah. She's no better.
No. So, but that, and and so I really like the idea going
Yeah.
back to what we were talking about in our point.
Yeah.
Like, I love the idea that like Lauren gifted him this like beautiful set of knives that he
Yeah.
was constantly using. He's signaling to Reese, and Reese
Yeah.
just doesn't quite pick up on it. So,
And Feyre didn't even pick up on it.
Feyre
Even
doesn't pick up on a lot
even
of
when he
stuff.
says to her face, "You don't know what you're talking about." Because she's like, "You sold us out. You're a traitor." Blah blah blah. He like looks right into her face, and he's like, "You don't know what you're talking about." And I love how Lucien was like cringe because he's like, "She's not gonna like get the meaning behind that.
No.
She's angry at you. She's gonna take it as the angry meaning." But like, there's really nothing else he could have said with Hybern watching them. Like he had to talk in code.
I think about that too.
You know?
I'm like, could Tamlin have communicated more with Feyre?
Probably. But once like Reese like was her mate, like I understand why he was completely suspicious.
Absolutely.
He knows what Reese is capable of.
Yeah.
But also the difference between Reese and Tamlin, the biggest difference between Reese and Tamlin is intent. Because you cannot tell me that he tricked her into the Weavers, laughed at her almost dying, covered in the melted flesh of the past victims.
Yeah.
And that was supposed to like make her feel powerful.
Yeah.
No.
I actually really, really like that you brought up the intent issue, because when we look at it from Tamlin's point of view, right? If you look at his actions, all of his actions were with good intent.
Good intentions.
He never meant to be malicious, to set out to hurt people, to get people turned in the cauldron, which had nothing to do with him even.
There's something that there's something that people in the fandom say when I'm like arguing with them all the time that just ticks me off. It just sends me off on a tangent. And it's when they said that he locked her up to keep her as a trophy wife.
Yeah.
Because where the fuck are you getting that?
That is not, I don't know where people come up with that, because he has never said anything remotely close to that. He's
No.
never expressed that.
No.
And also, like, I've heard that, and then people are like, look at the tithe. She had a tiny little chair right next to him. Okay, you guys,
because she
come on.
begged him not to be his equal, and she didn't want the responsibility of it. She wanted to just be his wife. She didn't want to
Yes.
be lady, high lady, consort. She just wanted to be his person.
Yes.
She didn't want
And
any
also,
responsibility. She begged him.
they had just come back from under the mountain. Tamlin, as we know, doesn't enjoy being High Lord, right? So like he just relies on tradition, but like you can't tell me that the other High Lords besides Rhys wouldn't do the same exact thing.
Mm-mm.
Right?
Mm-mm.
And
also, everyone's like, well, his tithe allows him to hunt people down and murder them. But first of all, that was his father's tradition, right?
Yeah.
Just because he's collecting money and Ianthe gave him the rights to hunt people doesn't mean he actually would.
No.
He uses that lingering traditional threat, or whatever you want to call it, because the people obviously remember how his father did it, to get them to pay their dues. Yeah. It's the same exact thing in real life. If you don't pay your taxes, you're going to jail.
Yes. Yes.
That's the threat. The lingering threat everybody knows. The government doesn't have to tell you, if you don't pay, I'm going to track you down and drag you to jail. You just know.
And that's what bothers me too, is it's just like Feyre just seems to me a little like uneducated or able to like see. Yeah. I mean, I can go off and say so much, but
about the politics of Prythian at all.
That's what I mean. It's like, so, and also like Lucien said, you had no idea how important it was for the first couple of months for us to seem like a united front. So they're just looking for stability the entire time.
They just need to get things back on track before she can just.
But at no point did Tamlin demonstrate Feyre was a trophy wife. He let her wear pants. Everyone's like, oh, Tamlin rolled his eyes when Feyre was wearing pants.
Yeah.
Tamlin
the only person that made her wear dresses was Ianthe, first of all. And I've said this before, but Feyre has a loud fucking mouth. If you don't want to wear a dress, tell her you're not fucking wearing the dress.
I know.
What is the big deal there?
Feyre has no problem voicing her opinion at any point in the series, at any point. And people are going to listen to this, and they're going to come back to us and say, you guys, she was traumatized. She had PTSD. How could you? You're so hateful.
Yeah. So did Tamlin.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what does that honestly have to do with telling someone you don't want to wear a dress? Just don't wear the fucking dress.
Yeah. And the thing is, too, is like she wore dresses in the night court when Rhys asked her to. So like, is she Rhys's dead wife too?
His dead mom's dresses that she made for her, which is fucking weird.
But like, also like, you could say the same thing about Rhys. Rhys is she had his kid. Do we know any high lady duties that she has besides paperwork?
She goes through the paperwork with her 6 months of learning how to read, apparently. Yeah. She knows how to go through paperwork and their expenditures.
So like, why the double standard?
Which just as a little note, I found was funny because I actually reread that part 2 days ago when she was doing the paperwork. High lady or defender of the rainbow and the desk. Yeah, that was funny. But I was like, she says, like, not that any of these expenditures even matter because none of them would make a dent in our fortune. But then the next book, you're fucking crying over Nesta buying some booze. 150 gold marks. You're telling me that makes a dent in your huge fortune? Fuck off, Feyre.
Sorry.
Fuck off. You're gonna cry now? You're gonna cry now.
Into her scrambled eggs. I'll never forget, like, and I'm not making fun of like how it was written, but I just like imagine the scene in my mind of like Feyre sitting there like eating her scrambled eggs, like weeping and stuff, and I can't help but like kind of laugh at it.
So you know what's funny? I don't know if you listen to Taylor Swift, but I love her. But the fucking anti-hero music video, and people who know, she talks about like the main like tagline is like it's me, hi, I'm the problem, it's me. And so there's actually a scene where she like cuts into eggs and like starlight pours out, like purple starlight pours out.
Stop it. She is an Avatar fan?
purple
Are you
glitter.
serious?
I don't know. So everyone says that Midnight Rain was about Feyre and Tamlin, or like High Infidelity was about Feyre and Tamlin and Rhys, because it says, do you really want to know where I was April 29th? Do I really have to chart the constellations in his eyes? And it's talk about like high infidelity, like an emotional cheating. And so everyone's like, it's Feyre and Rhys and Tamlin's song. Like, she has to be an ACOTAR fan. And then Midnight Rain.
I love that.
And Midnight Rain is like, he wanted a bride, but I was making my own name. He was Sunshine, I was Midnight Rain. And it's like, there's so many that it's just like,
T
oh
Swift.
my God.
I kind of wish she would comment on it and be like, yes, I was reading ACOTAR
Yeah,
when I wrote this.
Right?
I was reading it.
Like, yeah, it's so funny. But
I
yeah,
love
that just the egg thing, I just think of the music video where she cuts into her
Every
eggs and like
time.
purple starlight glitter
I
comes
wish
out.
that we could like take the clip of that video and like put it on our podcast for people to like see it.
I'll try to do that. I'll try to do that.
Yeah.
I'll make a note and I'll be like, this is the egg scene I was talking about.
But I will never, and also because like Silver Flames is my favorite book, so it's like I just remember almost everything about that
Yeah.
book. So
Yeah. I just the fucking I just get so mad
I know.
at her, but
I know.
anyways. But yeah, the whole like intent with Tamlin, like he never treated her like a trophy wife. Come on.
I just don't see any evidence of that. None.
No.
Nowhere.
And like people don't get why he locked her in. Like he didn't lock her in to be a trophy wife. He didn't lock her in because he wanted to do everything himself. There was a conversation that was had between him and Lucien, and Feyre was listening in, obviously. He probably knew she was listening in, because going back to ACOTAR, she says that he notices everything, right?
Yeah.
Where he literally says that Hybern is tracking her. He wants her for being made. Tamlin, with his whole childhood history with Hybern, knows him the best. He knows how Hybern will act. He knows his motivations. Like, Amarantha was Hybern's general, and look what she did to Feyre. Hybern wanted her for being made, and you can't tell me that it wasn't because he wasn't going to kill her for the High Lord's powers. You cannot tell me it wasn't so he could obtain those.
No, I absolutely agree
Because
with you.
then that would have single-handedly won him the war if they couldn't fight with their powers against him.
Because he had that weapon at his disposal. Oh, you want, Helian's powers. I have spell cleaving powers too.
Yeah.
You want to do glamoring. Feyre can glamour too.
Yeah.
I mean, of course he's gonna use that.
Yeah. Like Tamlin tells her that he's sending these monsters over to get her.
So I was thinking about that last week a lot too, is that I'm like, why? Because I actually think part of it is like people skip over that part. And I kind of feel like maybe the way it was written, it was kind of downplayed. I don't know if
It was downplayed.
Maybe it was downplayed, or maybe people just kind of skimmed it.
So the thing is people focus in on his anger issues, where Lucian's like, just let her train, and then he explodes on Lucien.
Yeah.
But he's exploding, like, I understand why Lucien is the mediator. He wants everyone to be happy. I love him for that. But you have to realize, like, if Hybern is tracking her powers, if she trained and she got stronger in those powers, it's a beacon. He's gonna find her more easily. He's gonna get to her more easily.
Well, and I think, didn't they even kind of mention that briefly?
He says that. He's like, it's like, something like her powers would be like a beacon to her or something like that. But then, not only that, but it's proven. When the adder goes after her with Rhys, he uses her as bait for the adder to prove it. He leaves her there. He's like, oh, I wanted to see who came for you first. First of all, Sketch. And then she's like, don't ever do that to me again. But it's like, so Rhys left you there for the adder. That's what you wanted Tamlin to do. You wanted to fight him, go fucking fight him.
Yes.
That's what you wanted to
Yes.
do. That's what he was protecting you from.
That's exactly what he was doing.
And then
Like-
we get Feyre admitting that Tamlin was right for the shield. Which in the next book she completely forgets, which I find funny. Because, again, as we know, Rhys has to be twisting her memories, which we're going to do another video on the inconsistencies there we mentioned before. But she says, I know the quote because I've fought with it so many times. She says, "So Tamlin was right, dash dash, about my safety." And then right after that, she screams at Rhys for using her as bait. So it's like she's mad at both.
Yeah, Feyre's she's just not happy. She just
Wants to do what she wants to do when she wants to do it.
Right. And that was really well said, and I mean that because like, and two, we get this scene, and I really want to commission this scene because to me this was like a huge turning point in the books of like Lucien. She literally is in the hallway, right? And we get Lucien and Tamlin, and they're coming out of a room, and she says they have weapons strapped to their back.
The stables.
The stables, because Hybern had invaded. So like I don't think people understand the gravity of like he was starting a war.
He was sending more and more and more of the monsters to the border.
Yes.
To grab Feyre because she was going to be his weapon in the war. Yes. Do people not get this?
Right,
Other than the cauldron. He would have had the cauldron, he would have had Feyre, but because Tamlin shielded her, he couldn't get to her, right? And then once she was shielded in Valaris, he couldn't get to her, right? So what does he do? He switched tactics. He uses her sisters.
Yes.
Because, hey, if she can be turned Fae and she's this powerful and I can't get her powers, maybe I can turn her sisters Fae, get their powers, which is exactly why he kidnapped Elain. He lured Elain. Which then he had like this weird kind of thing with Elain, which I was like, I
know, I noticed that too. Elain was taken to the Hyper camp.
So the cauldron purrs in her presence. Weird. Yeah. I had this weird theory last year. It was like an old theory before I started actually being a theorist, where Hybern lost Amarantha, right? And Ianthe's just annoying. Nobody wants Ianthe around.
Nobody wants Ianthe. She sucks.
I think that Hybern was luring Elain to make her his queen.
Really?
I kind of
because
it was at the time. It was at the time when everyone was talking about Elain's villain arc. And I was thinking like kind of like Hades and Persephone, sort of.
Yeah.
Where she was a seer. If she was his queen, she could tell him, if at any point they were any steps ahead of him, right?
Yes.
Not to mention he thought she was gorgeous.
Yes. He did. He said that. Bring the pretty one out first. I want
the pretty one out. Yeah.
Like, which is so funny to me because, like, I know. And I don't know why, but like to me, I know Elaine is supposed to be like the beauty and everything like that, but like, I don't know. Feyre and Nesta, I'm always like, oh, they're
so pretty too. Yeah.
They're so pretty. Everyone's so pretty, but
I know. But yeah, I think the King of Hybern was going to somehow try to make her his mate.
I love that theory.
Because as we saw with Phazand, and what he was doing for Tamlin, which again, Tamlin knew nothing about, he honestly thought that he broke Phazand's bond. Remember?
I know, he did.
He just broke their bargain from under the mountain, but he thought that he broke their bond. So I think that he was probably going to try to break her bond with Lucien and make her his mate and his queen.
I love it. And I think that's amazing. But it's because it's like, why else lure Elaine? Why not take Nesta? Like,
I know, like everyone wanted Nesta, and he's like, no, I want the middle one.
I want Elaine.
Which is why I think Elaine has the most witch power.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I know you and I were talking about that, and everything just kind of seemed to click for me.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I love it. But that brings me, if we're thinking that Elaine is kind of like the ultimate, has the most power, that brings me to Reese's mom.
Mm-hmm.
And something that you and I had talked about that never
Yeah.
clicked with me until you mentioned it.
Yeah, I did a reel on my
And now it's all I
Instagram
can think about.
about Reese's mom being a witch if you guys want to watch it.
Yes.
Should I post
Like-
it on Spotify? If people want to watch the theory, should I post it here?
You should, because it's a well said video.
Sort of well said. Part 3, I was like, I don't know about blah blah blah, and then like I
liked
stopped
it.
filming it. I like posted it, and then I was like, it just clicked like right
Yeah.
after part 3.
Well, so then if we're talking about Lauren and Tamlin, right, and our theory that they were lovers and that like he's wearing these bandoliers as a gift from her.
Mm-hmm.
So then the question is his mother, if Lauren got out of Prythian before she was killed, right? Because everyone's like, he burned the wings and like he severed their heads and we saw it. Okay, maybe not though. Maybe
the Glamour stay after death, so it didn't have to be theirs.
Right. Glamour stayed
as we
after
know
death.
from Andras, he stayed a wolf after death because
And
Tamlin isn't dead. As long as Tamlin is alive,
Yep.
his whatever glamour
Magic
or spells or whatever it is will stay.
Right. But also, Tam makes a point to bring up that he burns the wings, and everyone's like, first of all, I see in the fandom people say he didn't burn the wings and that he still had them, and that's simply not true. He burned the wings.
He told Feyre. He told Feyre that he burned them right after his father died out of respect for the dead. But
yes.
I also kind of think that if it wasn't the mother and sisters, right, which he probably wouldn't have cared that they were there, even though he said it made them sick anyway. Because anyways, anyone's appendage hanging on a wall would make you sick. let me just okay. That would be like if Claire Better was, up on Feyre's wall at the River House. Like that's what Tamlin had to live with during this whole thing, like their wings being there. But anyway, if he had let Rhys like come and like see them, which why would he want to? But he would have known that they weren't like his family's wings.
Yeah.
I know like Illyrians all kind of have the same wings, but you have to kind of think that like family knows family, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
Like if someone's arm was cut off and you had to identify it, like you would kind of know what your sister's hand looks like. Am I being weird?
It's just so funny. I'm not laughing at that, but I'm just laughing at how you're describing it because it's so true.
I'm trying to like equate it. I'm sorry. But anyways.
It's so funny because I always think of it, and then we'll get back to Rhys's mother. I always think of like sorry, I always just think of how I think there's a double meaning to him burning those wings. Yeah, because of that. But also I always think of Eris, and Eris is like, and this quote always sticks with me for some reason. Rhys is always so blind.
Yeah. Oh my god, we bring up this quote all the time, but it's so true. I swear to God, we've brought this up like every video. And we're gonna keep bringing it
all right. Last time I'm bringing it up. But anyways, so like, okay, do we think that the mom's alive? Yes or no?
At this point, no.
I don't think she's alive either.
I think she was for maybe a little bit.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But see, there's two different sides to this, because if she's actually dead and my ring theory is true, I'll put up the ring theory that I had. Then I feel like that would kind of lead into Crescent City 3, right? With all the witchcraft and the 6-pointed star and all of that stuff. And like
on her ring.
The crypticness of everything she told Rhys. But if she is alive, I also still have that theory that she's Maja. And I can't get that out of my head for some reason.
I would like it. I would be really intrigued by that. But I also would be intrigued if like she's the person they contacted in Crescent City 3, House of Flame and Shadow. Like she's the woman that's like somehow summoned, or the spirit. And she's like, hey, my daughter, she's still alive. She
Yeah.
actually made it out of Ramiel, and she's living in, you know,
Yeah. Like another world.
or they're gonna try to like make contact with his sister and his mom, and like they're not going to be able to like make contact with the
Yeah,
sister because
exactly.
spoiler, she's alive.
Yeah.
You know,
Weird.
that's what I'm convinced is
Well,
gonna happen
so-
anyways.
So the thing with Maja is we don't know anyone in the ACOTAR series that is older than Baron currently, right?
Right.
We know Baron is, going by my research of Eris's age and Lady Autumn's age, Baron is at least 1,000 because he was 500 when he married, or in his 500s when he married Lady Autumn, and she was 20. And then she had Eris 20 years later when she was 40. So Eris is in his 500s like Rhys. So that means the mother's only 40 years older than him. She's in her 500s. Baron's in his thousands. Which is why Rhys is like, you know, that old bastard, that old blah, 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 blah. So Baron looks like he's probably in like his 50s, right?
Yeah.
There's one person that looks older than Baron, and it's Maja. She is old, wrinkly. I think they said like silver or white hair, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
wouldn't it make sense for someone Rhys feels comfortable? Like, why did he hire her out of all the other healers in her old age like that? Right?
That's a good question.
She's the
But
only
you think at
old.
the same time that Rhys would figure it out.
He could, but the thing is, it's like she's the only old Fae that we've seen.
That's true.
So, if his mother did in fact put a spell on herself or glamour herself or whatever, at this point, she wouldn't have been super old, but she would have been a little older. Mm-hmm. So what if it was her? I know you had a little theory about how she could time travel. Was that you who had the theory
don't
that the
think that was
mother
me.
could time jump?
No.
Oh, someone in the
No.
group went off of my witch theory, and they said, what if she wasn't only a seer, but she could also travel through time?
That would be amazing.
So what if the mother just traveled through time to when she was that old, and Rhys
And
doesn't
came back.
recognize her because he only knew his mother as being his young mother. He wouldn't recognize her in her super old age like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And like she could glamour her wings.
I
Unless-
mean,
Does it say
there's
that?
variant-
I don't think it says if Maja has wings or not. I don't think they even mentioned it.
I don't think it's mentioned. I don't think it's mentioned at all.
Is she Illyrian though? I don't think they mention what she is, but
They
she's
don't
from
even
the
mention.
Night Court. So
Yeah, she is.
she could be Illyrian.
She's kind of big. Like we don't know a lot. Oh, absolutely, she could be Illyrian.
Yeah. I just think it was weird. I know it's going into the whole point, but really quick. So the time travel theory came from when I said that how did the mother know about Feyre? How did she know her measurements? You know, that she was going to survive the marriage and get the ring. All of this stuff. Like, what if she had time traveled at one point?
Time traveled. Or did we talk about the scene theory?
The
Yeah.
what? The what
She
theory?
was a seer.
Yeah. Yeah, seer. But
Yeah.
like, so what if Maja is her, like I said, time traveling, but like up to when Reese is mated. Like, I know time travel is so weird and complicated, but you know how
It
some
is.
shows do that? How like you're in the present day, but then for someone else, it's the future.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So what if that's what's happening here? Because
Yeah.
when she does say if she can't get the ring, she won't survive the marriage. So how did she know the whole thing about Nyx having wings when the bone carver didn't even know that?
If that's who the bone carver saw, we still don't know for sure. She could have seen Ruin.
Oh my God, I have to share that with you. I forgot to share that with you.
Yeah.
There's
yeah.
there's a video from Sam on TikTok, and it explains how that by Reese and Feyre using their magic at the High Lords meeting, because Reese said that if they did, there would be
Yes.
huge consequences.
I saw that.
You saw that one?
I saw that.
You saw that one?
We talked about it. You and me
Oh, we
talked about it.
talked
And I
about
was
it.
like,
Okay. Yeah,
my
yeah,
mind
yeah.
was blown.
Yeah, so that's probably why Nyx had wings.
Had wings. It
And
could
if
be
the
that.
mother time traveled, she would have known all of this,
Yes.
right?
Right.
And she would have known that Nesta would have saved her with the trove.
Yes.
Because if Nesta's a witch like her, right? Hence, like, the marriage thing.
Interesting. I do think there's something to that for knowing Feyre's exact size for all of the dresses. Like, so she saw Feyre. She knows like who she is, you know.
Mhm.